so we all know that Mel B was a part of the Spice Girls, but when she decided to go solo, she didn't experience much success. So let's take a look at why Mel B's solo career failed. Around 98, many of the Spice Girls started to pursue solo careers, including Mel B, who released her first album, Hot, in 2000. This album was a different sound from the group, being a blend of pop and R&B music. Her first single, I Want You Back, featured Missy Elliott, and this single was featured on the soundtrack for the movie Why Do Fools Fall in Love, and this went on to be her most successful single, reaching number 1 on the UK charts. The album went on to produce a few more singles, including Tell Me and Feel So Good, which would be a top 5 hit, and Word Up, a cover of Cameo's 1980s hit, and she had Lullaby, which didn't perform well on the charts. And even with all the heavy hitters working on her album like Missy Elliott, Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis, and Teddy Riley, the album sales were not hot. This album flopped and only sold 60,000 copies. Now, some say that because her album was released 1 month before the Spice Girls comeback album, that fans may have been more interested in another Spice Girls album rather than a Mel B solo project, but I think it failed for a couple reasons. One being that it just wasn't a great album, and Mel B admits the faults of her debut album when she says, "There was no real thread to hold the tracks together. I did get the best out of every song, but when you listen to them one after the other, it doesn't sound like somebody's album, it sounds like a hodgepodge compilation." And I do think overall listening to the album, it was mediocre at best. Even the number 1 single couldn't boost the album sales. And Mel B just failed to capture the Spice Girls' core fan base. Her look and sound as a solo artist was more pop and R&B infused, and that's different from the bubblegum pop sound of the Spice Girls. So I don't think Mel B's sound carried over to the Spice Girls crowd. And as a result, in 2001, she parted ways with Virgin Records, and her PR released this statement. Melanie has had an excellent relation with Virgin Records, but feel it may be more appropriate for her to be at a record company with an urban A&R department. And honestly, a company with an urban A&R department would have been a better fit because she was jumping more into R&B music, so they would have better understood her vision. After being released, she took a hiatus from music and focused on film and television, doing Dancing with the Stars and Broadway, and returned in 2005 with her next album, LA State of Mind, which also included a documentary following her life in LA. And this was released on an independent record label and had 1 single, and it was a strictly pop album. But this project failed and sold less than her debut album and also received bad reviews. AllMusic stated that LA State of Mind is not only the worst solo Spice album by some distance, it's also one of the worst pop albums of the decade. Now, I wouldn't call it the worst album of the decade, but it wasn't received well, and this is reflected in the poor album sales. And after this, she pretty much threw in the towel on her solo career. She would go on to do the Spice Girls Reunion tour, and outside of the entertainment world, Mel B was dealing with a lot in her personal life, and she opens up about this in her book where she's transparent about things from the Spice Girls to drug use and her abusive marriage. And these things may have kept her from stepping back into the music scene, but she would return 7 years later in 2013 with the single For Once in My Life, and this will perform well, hitting number 13 on the Billboard charts, and this will be her last solo effort. And as of now, she is probably more known for being a judge on TV competition shows. Looking back over her career, it's safe to say she had a failed solo career. She had a few singles perform well and moderate success, but it still resulted in 2 albums that just didn't connect and failed to really cross into the mainstream. When you look at the Spice Girls solo endeavors, Mel B just ran last in terms of success. And that's not to say she failed because she isn't talented. She faced boundaries that none of her other group members faced, being the only woman of color, and I do think that has affected her overall experience in the entertainment industry. Even though her solo career failed, she really didn't need a solo career to solidify her legacy. She will forever be written in history as a member of one of the most successful girl groups of all time, and that is pretty legendary. So why do you think Mel B's career never quite took off? Comment down below and let me know what you think.